across the desk where we could join Haxi Mars-Belkin, who's going to be talking us through the international press and, of course, this Donald Trump's trade policies, the diplomatic standoff between Mexico and the US, dominating the front pages today.
Absolutely. So this is, of course, about Trump's insistence that he will build that wall between the US and Mexico, and that Mexico will pay for it. Mexico, of course, says that they will not pay for it categorically. This piece in the Wall Street Journal outlines how Mexico's president cancelled a meeting at the White House around the same time that Trump appeared to endorse imposing a 20% tax on all imported goods from Mexico. Trump's press secretary later seemed to downplay that particular course of action, but not before, we read here, that rift between the US and Mexico had significantly widened.
Now, you got a piece for us, Haxi, in the New York Times. It takes a particularly dim view of Donald Trump's latest manoeuvrings.
Yes, unsurprisingly. So for this paper, the latest wall controversy is further proof that Trump is unfit to serve American interests. It argues that by letting his anti-immigrant feelings slip over into his foreign policy decision-making, Trump is setting up disastrous consequences for workers and consumers in both countries, especially considering just how intertwined the two countries have become since the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, since that came into effect in 1994.
And I suppose, rather unsurprisingly, that's a view that has been echoed in much of the Mexican press this morning.
Yes, this piece in Excelsior is definitely worth a read. It starts off by setting out that any 20% levy on imports would actually be very hard to implement. Complex supply chains throughout Mexico, the US and Canada mean it's very hard to pinpoint exactly where a product comes from. Then, of course, there's the simple fact that the additional cost of imports will most likely be passed on to American consumers. And finally, this piece argues that the less purchasing power there is in Mexico, well, there'll be fewer, but the market for US exports will be diminished. So Mexico, of course, is the second largest destination for US goods.
Certainly lots of things to watch out for there. Well, Enrique Peña Nieto, he may have been keen to cancel his first planned meeting with the US president as a result of this manoeuvring, but one world leader has decided to stick to her guns.
She has, and that person, as we read here in a British centre-right daily, The Times, is, of course, Theresa May, the British Prime Minister. In a speech to a Republican congressional retreat in Philadelphia ahead of her meeting with Trump later today, May sought to match elements of Trump's controversial foreign policy, including criticism of what she called China's increasingly assertive posture. But she also used the opportunity to reassert the importance of NATO and to call on Trump to assume the mantle of leadership worldwide. There's a nice cartoon on that upcoming meeting between Trump and May in that same paper. The two, you can see them there, go to shake hands in the Oval Office, but rather than making for May's hand, Trump goes for her crotch. A reference, of course, to Trump's infamous pussy-grabbing comments and a warning to May to watch out for the man who's promised time and time again that he is going to be putting America first.
We've got another cartoon. I'm a bit worried to see it now, actually, and this is only in the Telegraph. This is riffing off May's meeting with Trump once again.
Yes, so what we see here is two men, MPs, walking through the House of Commons. One says to the other, "I'm just saying triggering Article 50 would be a lot easier if we could torture the Remainers." Now, Article 50, of course, being the mechanism that will trigger Britain's exit from the EU, and torture being a method of intelligence gathering recently endorsed once again by Donald Trump.
Well, the British government, it does appear to be edging towards Brexit, doesn't it?
It does. In this piece in Left Wing Daily, The Guardian, we read that the British government has published its bill to trigger Article 50. Now, the bill is just 137 words long, and it's going to be debated over the course of 5 days. It's very much expected to pass, although we read here that a number of Labour MPs believe that's just not enough time to scrutinise it properly.
Okay, we'll expect to hear lots more on that story throughout the weeks and months ahead. For now, let's move on to another one of our top stories here in France 24 this morning. The big news coming out of Gambia.
Yes, so the Gambia's new president, Adama Barrow, is now back in Gambia after the country's former autocratic president, Yahya Jammeh, refused to step down when he lost the election. Canadian paper The Star is carrying some impressive pictures of Barrow's return 1 week after he took the oath of office in neighbouring Senegal. And if you're interested in the series of events that led to Jammeh finally going into exile, there's a very interesting piece in mainstream Turkish daily, the Hurriyet Daily News. It essentially heaps praise on the role played by ECOWAS. Now, that's the Economic Community of West African States, and I do recommend you take a look at that if you're interested in this story.
OK, and let's finish up with something a bit more light-hearted. Haxie, it's Chinese New Year, or Lunar New Year, for those who are celebrating. It's just around the corner. Celebrations kick off this Saturday, but not everyone's celebrating, are they?
They're not. So once upon a time, the month leading up to the Chinese New Year was busy for Chinese matchmakers. But in this piece in the China Daily, we read that the mass exodus of young people from rural villages to big cities has dealt a severe blow to the ritual. This New Year, we read here, more young Chinese people than ever before will be turning to dating apps and not their local matchmaker Hala to find love.
Oh dear, modern technology. Another one bites the dust as a result. Thanks for that, Axie Mars-Belkin, taking us through the